please provide a background of yourself, including your core competencies and role at your organization?
Okay. Some background fairly quickly is I grew up, if you will, at Bell Labs, AT&T Bell Labs. I have a patent for some work I did there. And I ended up working with our major clients around the world, helping them do strategic plans. You know, where do we want to go and how do we want to get there? Mainly in Europe and Asia. I was asked to come back, not come back per se, but to focus back on AT&T, and was part of a small team to create the next generation core network. We proposed an IP-based network. This was in the early 90s, which they didn't think made a lot of sense. So we used that framework to create something that became called AT&T WorldNet, which was the internet offering, if you will, from AT&T for business and consumer. Stayed around there for a while. It got to be a little frustrating. I think it's self-evident kind of how AT&T morphed itself into obsolescence. Went to work for a startup that didn't, and then decided to use my skills in planning and execution and innovation with predominantly privately held companies. So I work with, as I said, predominantly privately held companies and help them create very actionable, adaptable plans for growth that usually implies a lot of innovation, and that almost always, I mean, I don't know how not to have that involved, all ends of the value chain. So from the supply chain coming in to meeting the needs of your customers. And I think innovation happens throughout that whole process. Most people like that, I think, tend to look at innovation mainly at the customer end and don't really apply it to the supply chain, where there's a lot of opportunity for business model innovation and how you deal with your suppliers and the relationships. My role at my organization is me. So I am a sole proprietorship, and I have my own consulting firm that does what I just spoke about. I'm also a partner at an early-stage venture capital firm. And so in that case, the supply chain issues are really critical because we're dealing with not a lot of money, not a lot of network in terms of contacts. And so how do we really maximize the value we're going to get out of our suppliers, assess whether they can be there when we need them there, whether they can be there for the long term, build partnerships, et cetera. So there's a real, I don't want to say different, but a stronger focus, at least initially, when you're starting something up. So that's a kind of quick little bit about my background and what I do.
And do you believe business processes are a source of competitive advantage?
Absolutely. I think they are, and I think they're often overlooked because, and not to minimize this, because obviously if you are not anticipating, meeting, exceeding your customers' needs and understanding where they're going or where they want to go, even if they can't articulate it, you don't have a business. But I think most people focus on that and don't focus as much on the process side of things, partially because it's not fun and sexy and all that kind of stuff. There is, I think, one of the biggest advantages a company can have is simply executing excellently. Even if your product is as good as the others or good enough, if you can execute and be efficient and streamlined, you can have a tremendous competitive advantage that could be hard to replicate, because as you develop those capabilities, I think the core competency is in being able to innovate and improve your processes and create a culture that is, I want to say process-driven, but I don't want people to imply that means not creative, because I think process and innovation are not oxymorons. They go hand in hand. So really focusing and streamlining your processes and reevaluating them and continually improving them and redefining work is a huge competitive advantage that I think is often overlooked.
And can you talk some of your experience in developing some business processes that served as a source of innovation and competitive advantage?
Yes, specifically in the companies that I've worked for. Granted, when I was at Bell Labs and AT&T, a lot of this was data-driven. And so since I was in the data world, a lot of the processes we put in place were really around being able to get to the data quickly analyze it or have it displayed in a way that we could analyze it. And the other part of that is not just getting the information you need, which applies to anybody, regardless of what your industry is, but learning how to keep looking at that and becoming excellent at that and institutionalizing it. And I would talk about planning as a process, for instance, and I am amazed at the number of clients I'll work with where the C-suite doesn't even have regular staff meetings, or if they do, they're not going over a regular set agenda of where the plan is, what are the outages, what's going well, what's not going well, and a process for how to improve those. So some of the business processes may seem really mundane and obvious but rarely get done, like business planning as a process and tracking measures and successes and deficiencies as a process. I've also seen one of the other processes that I've worked with clients on, as well as having done a bit myself, was processes for evaluating suppliers. And also, one of the ones that I think is significant is what I would call doing a voice of the supplier. There's a phrase used in industry called voice of the customer, where you go out and you spend a day with your customer and you understand what they do and what they need and all that stuff. Very few companies do that with their suppliers and understand how their suppliers work, how their suppliers' factories or plants work, and what they could do to maybe make their suppliers more efficient and productive themselves, or to make things easier for their suppliers, so then actually maybe they could get product faster, better, less expensive, whatever. But I think that is a real key process that I've seen and have used to be very beneficial, which is, again, more partnering, but really almost treating your supplier as a customer, and building up a rapport and a relationship with them that then allows you both to get more out of each other.
And how do you build a capability and process flexibility to reflect evolving business models?
I think basically, and the last question really gets to culture. I think you can do all these processes, but if it is not part of the culture of the company, it's not going to happen. So that starts at the very top. That's built into performance management, reward, recognition, et cetera. And I think process flexibility is like a core competency. And so I think you can create a culture around flexibility in general and adaptability, which then means that you can be flexible and adaptable, meaning your customers' needs, process needs, supplier needs, et cetera. So I think it's kind of at a macro level. At a tactical level, I think one of the ways you build in process flexibility is have a lot of cross-functional teams. So if you're talking supply chain, don't always just have the supply chain folks in there, production, ops, manufacturing, whatever. Get sales and marketing in there. Even get customers in there so that you can see the whole end-to-end issues and ideas that you're dealing with. So I think you need a cross-functional team. You need a diverse team of people from different views and viewpoints as well. And one of the things you do that can come out of that is a lot of different ideas for how to redo the process, reinvent the process. And a key to that is questioning your assumptions. So we've always gotten the material in this way, in this package, at this time, on this date, in this dock, yada, yada, yada. Well, why do we do it that way? And asking why a lot to understand, well, what if we got this material in this package at this time instead and brought it in a different way and mixed it up a different way? What could we do? So I think one of the keys to process flexibility that helps you improve the culture, create the culture, enhance the culture, and build the culture is to constantly question the assumptions of why you're doing things the way you are. And once you put a process in place, even if it's going great, reevaluate the process, because maybe things have changed and the process could be improved. And that needs to be done in terms of both efficiency and effectiveness. It's not just, you can have a really efficient process that's not that effective, or a really effective process that's not that efficient. And there has to be a balance between those. And so I think it kind of boils down to questioning the assumptions and why you're doing this and making sure you have new ideas and new viewpoints coming in.
Logipi.